And isn't it Oscar level irony how our necks become plot twists? We never quote Will Smith's knockout roles, just how he rocked Chris, so some kid in Philly only sees his life get flipped, turned upside down. Never how his Uncle Phil teaches a prince he can be more than a king. He can be a god. Gods can't be black. Gods never have to protest. They don't make headlines. They make gospels. How could we be gods if it's a miracle just being alive? Hashtag our children can be gods too.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Conscious Endeavor. We're here talking about all the cool things, self-consciousness, reality, a little bit about the artistic perspective. I'm your host, Iron Man Dan.
My boy.
A nickname given to me by Mr. Rashad Wright.
What's up, y'all?
Joining me here. Poet, lyricist, frontman of a band, runs a venue, all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Mr. Wyl White, musician, guitar player, singer, all those good things. So I want to go right in right away, and let's just dive in. Really what I think, especially with all three of us here, these guys are both performers. I'm a performer myself. So one of the things that I really think is interesting is whether or not music or art or these things are innate to us, right? Do we have an inclination, right? Does it come to us, or is it innate? Is it instinctual, or is it something that we kind of learn in terms of expression? And maybe I'll pose that to you first, Rashad, in terms of like, when did let's say the art bug hit you?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this like all week because I'm having an existential crisis right now.
Yeah, the way of the artist, of course.
Yo, that's every week, every month. But I'm like, I don't really, at this point in my life, I'm not sure if I consider myself so much as an artist, unless you consider the act of performing in artistry, which I don't, because I think it's a way of life. We all are the person.
That sounds great. That's a very artistic answer. I guess.
It is for sure. Yeah, super heady. That's me.
Yeah.
But I got into poetry. I love poetry, but I don't know when I got into it or when that love happened. It was always much more about me being on stage and having a medium to perform.
Right.
Poetry just happened to be that medium.
So you had that kind of bug to be expressive, and then you found a means
Yes.
for it.
Yep.
That's cool.
And poetry served that purpose.
What about you, Will? Like, when did you hit the music bug, or like, did you have that as a kid? Did it come later?
No, I was pretty much doing it as a kid, running around dancing and stuff. I was like, oh wow, this is cool. Is this expression? And kind of like went with the catharsis of it. I was like, wow, this is right. Working out my emotions. And from there, kind of grew up into musical theater. I was like, wow, this is really cool too. I can act and dance and sing. And then I went to music, actual music, like playing guitar and stuff. I was like, wow, one of these instruments really makes sense. I picked up the violin. I was like, pick up the cello. And I picked up the guitar. I was like, this is really about what it is. And kind of just...
So wait, Will, you do it all. What instruments do you play? You're talking about acting. I didn't know you were in theater. Like, what are all the things that you do?
Yeah, let's get the formal introduction.
Right, you know?
Well, live. I can breathe, right? That's the coolest part.
Amen.
That's hard to do. I'm not gonna
Consciousness. No. But no, I do martial arts, acting, music, cooking. I cooked for like 15 years.
Is cooking an art form for you?
Oh yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
it's like having some different mediums all meet at one point, or medium, and then having them kind of convert into something that's like pleasant and palatable for
the right ingredients, the right amounts. It's kind of like mixing even with music. Like, how loud is the snare, right? Do you want more of that or more of this? It's like a pinch of salt and
that
some
nuance,
paprika. You know what I mean? So the blending, I think, of elements always comes in. I definitely found music at a young age. I mean, it was weird though too, because again, I think it was like the tool wasn't there yet, because I didn't start playing music, or I didn't start playing bass or pick up an instrument formally until I was like 16. It was like the one and only instrument. I picked it up and I just stuck with it. You know what I mean? So it was interesting. But definitely when I was like 5, like my parents had like disco cassettes, that they were just around the house, and I would put them in, and I'd be like, it would I would jive and dance and move around and stuff. And I think that was really interesting, like the foyer into music. It's like you find your way. Finding that tool,
Was it family for you too, bro?
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a jazz singer too, so same.
Not a jazz singer, but my dad really enjoyed Motown, so I kind of got into that. Yeah. Took over.
Cool. Yeah, Motown, especially like with all the harmonies, like 5 people in Motown group, or 3 or 4.
Well, it depends, I guess.
Yeah, quartet or quintet or whatever the hell they want to do, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. There's always the high pitched voices though. Like the falsetto is always like really rung it in for like what it was back then. It's always nice to hear too.
I bet, yeah. Nice falsetto. Shit.
So in terms of like art too, I mean, like you saying you don't really consider yourself an artist, and that's a really interesting thing to say, especially someone who's, I would absolutely say, entrenched in the arts. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting, and I think even as part of artistry is like this struggle with like self-identity.
Yeah.
Like, who am I as an artist? Right. And I feel like it becomes such a tool of evolution and of growth, and like you have many layers. You know, you tend to have, you know, different evolutions. And it's like, oh, when I was writing this music, or when I wrote this poem, right, it was a specific time in my life. Each one ends up representing kind of like a specific era. You know what I mean?
In writing, one of the things we teach ourselves is even if you're writing memoir, you never refer to the main character or the person speaking as I or self. That's always just the narrator. So when I wrote this poem and I say I could run 2 miles in like 12 minutes, no, I can't do that. But the narrator that wrote that shit in that moment could accomplish that. It's all about the narrator, not the reader or the self or even the audience. Yeah.
It's also a very nice way of like defining a less selfish way of approaching writing. Pretty cool, because then you don't have to continually put, oh, well, I to describe what.
Right. It's like non-centric, I would say, and kind of gives you more freedom. Because I mean, inherently, I think as like individual minds, we have like these, you know, we have our own perplexities, like the things that make us weird, the things that make us cool, and we can express that. But I think in writing, I mean, I tend to be really symbolic.
Okay.
Like I go into like really like open-ended linguistics, and like even the way that we define things. Like one a poem, I'm going to call it a poem because it's not really a song. I mean, I play something, but then I read over it, and it says, define love, define lust, define nothing if you must, right? So it goes into this whole idea of like, how do you define these specific things, and where are the boundaries in these things? And like, you know, I end up talking about like defining time and like all these, you know, sorts of things. So I love that interplay.
Well, I mean, while we're talking about it, you're talking about whether or not you even define it as a song or a poem. What makes something a song or a poem? When is that line drawn? Can't any poem be sung theoretically?
Yeah.
Can any song be poetry theoretically? What makes the difference? We're talking about whether or not we even identify as artists. Solve your perspective.
Yeah.
So valid. I feel like it's the timbre, the way you like the elongated parts of the sentence that like cascade into the rest of the actual
right.
Or where you start to like melodically express, you know, what it is that's happening, or the narrative of the actual like story or song.
So I guess it's really about delivery. You know, how do you want to deliver it? For me, because the funny thing too is I would take song lyrics that I had, and I would go to like open poetry things and then just read them outright. You know, just read the lyrics and like work with that and kind of do that. But yeah, it's a fine line, and it depends on the purposiveness. Right. So something that's written, it could be a poem, it could be a lyric, it could be a book, like for all I care, you know, but like depending on how you use it. Right. Which I almost want to draw the analogy in the sense that we all had that kind of bug for art, and then how we utilized it, the avenue that we went down, you know, ended up becoming the expressive vessel, you know.
Sounds like context.
Yeah. I mean, it's an exploration. Right. Also, it's like, you know, you picked up violin at one point, and you were like, whether you were digging it or not. And like,
I still do.
Yeah.
I just find the guitar is a little easier. It's like trying to find the right style, switching in between which one makes more sense for the context.
Yeah. Guitar is really easy for as far as a songwriter perspective, because you can sit there and wail on the chords and just keep the rhythm. Right. Whereas violin's very like linear in terms of its melody, probably harder to hold space.
You're kind of a lead when you play violin, huh?
Yeah. It's harder, as you were saying, to have like a rhythmic encompassing of the entirety of the song by playing violin. Cello is different because you can hold those longer notes, and they reach heavier, presence as opposed to a violin. It kind of has a very specific classical tonality to follow its own specific like solo time.
Yeah. And I mean, I love what you do with it. So for those of you guys who don't know, this guy's got a loop pedal, performs solo at times. You're looping the guitar. I do as well.
Yeah.
But you're looping the guitar and then hopping on the violin and playing on top of, a lot of times you'll have like a track too, like a pulse track or whatever. And, that was, and I think you use a little distortion in the violin, no? If I'm not wrong.
I don't have a plug-in.
Okay.
But I will get one eventually.
Okay. Yeah,
Aren't you humble? Wow.
I'm alive.
Just remember. That was what was that one show I came to? It was like near Houston Street. It started with an S, I think. The
Halston?
What?
In Jersey City?
No, it was in Manhattan.
Oh, Sour Mouse.
Sour Mouse.
It's a really cool place.
That was cool.
Yeah.
A little basement venue.
Yeah.
Really cool spot, man. That was a cool one. That's very nice.
It's fun. It's pool table, so the vibe is very like, oh, okay, it's kind of like a biker bar. But then you go down, it's like, oh, it's kind of like a New York City scooter bar, because like it's a lot of hip young people.
Scooter bar.
A scooter bar.
I dig it.
When was that a thing? That's funny.
It just became a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a lot of young hip crowd.
Right.
And so they kind of respond to the pop songs that are like, oh, this guy violin. What is this guy doing playing fucking?
Yeah, I think my goal when I perform is for people to say "what the fuck" at least 3 times.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So when you loop something and then and then like with the bass, I shred, right? I'll play like something really upbeat, and people are like, "What the?" And
I mean, shock value and surprise is what makes a performance memorable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Then I loop it. Then you pull out a poem out of your pocket, and then that's the second. What the? You know, right? And my goal is always to get 3. So,
Word. Get it 3 times. Feel that.
If that's a 30 or 45-minute set. I've been doing a lot of 15-minute like showcase things. That's harder to get 3. Maybe just one 15-minute span.
Do a costume change. There'll be some drop jaws.
There you go.
Yeah.
But that's mad hard. I'd have to in that time frame. I'd have to have that thing where I could just rip off like real quick.
The breakaway jacket. That's funny.
Just totally did suit underneath.
Work when they work. Plus it's hot.
Yeah. I mean, so do you bring in? I want to ask you: do you bring any visual element into your performance? Like, do you think about that a lot, or do you just like rock your normal style? Or
I mean, I was talking to that kid I was talking to in the gym about today. I was telling him, yo, the only reason I work out is because my body is a vessel for my work, and I want my body to be as presentable as possible, because I think my work deserves that. I put my heart into it. So the way you see me on stage is just as important, or is just as thoughtful as what I'm saying and how I'm performing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Will? Do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do a different regimen. Like I take a lot of like cardiovascular training. Like I'll run for fucking hours.
Cool.
Yeah, because you gotta be like, you gotta like give that to people for hours.
And you're also that cardiovascular, having the breath to be strong throughout like an hour performance. Or also you're doing like residencies, so you're doing long.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll do like 3 during a day. I'll do 9 hours of like consecutive singing. Yes, it's really hard.
So 3 different venues.
Yeah, I'll go
day,
from like start at like 12 in the afternoon, and I'll play from like 12 to 3, and then I'll go to another place to play from 4 to 7, and then go to another place to play from 8
What's the 12 to 3 spot normally? Is it like a pizza bar?
Airport, actually.
The airport? Where, Newark or JFK or? Newark. That's crazy.
Didn't even know they had stages.
No,
I don't think they do, but you could.
In the airport.
And did you get hired to do that? Or are you busking? Or?
Yeah, no, the city. I work for Newark, Jersey City, and sometimes Clifton. So they'll hire me for like festivals or whatever, and I'll go
Right. Yeah. Very cool, man.
Fire.
Tied into the municipalities, man. We were just talking a lot about how art and municipality, and like just how that works. The funding for art, getting grants into arts, getting bookings from the arts. I think everybody really kind of we need each other in that regard too, because it's really hard, especially in the modern world. I feel like the artist is made to do everything. Like being a musician, it's like I write my music, I bring my equipment, I promote the show. I sell all the tickets, you know what I mean? Then I load up, I play the show, I unload, I'm doing it, you know, on top of that, you know, you want to get your recordings done, you want to do all this, and it's like, you know, and you got to make your content 100%, right? So you end up having 7 jobs when you're an artist, and then people are like, oh, artists are lazy. It's like, do you know?
No idea.
What's involved?
And
like probably doing it
to like put that out there too.
Right.
The capital return isn't like representative of all the work either. Like, you know, never.
Yeah, you're saying too, the mentality, like,
yeah, because you got to like apply to the formula or in this case the algorithm, and making sure that it constantly stays active throughout.
Right.
It's like presence online, so that people are, oh, well, I put this up a month ago, so now that it's been up for a month, people have an idea of where it is, and some people will go to it, or some people will be like, oh yeah, I forgot, and it's easier to put it up the day before.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is social media marketing is like an entire job.
Yeah,
you need to know how the algorithm works, what time of day to be posting it, what type of clips, what type of hashtags. You know, that in itself is an entire job, and again, you're expected to do that. Well, as an artist,
I do think I'm in a bit of a different position than y'all, because y'all are musicians, and I think there are so many musicians out there that are doing everything, and you have that community of people that all have these same skills, and they're all using them. In poetry, I was on a team that just got like 2nd in the world, and I think out of all 5 of us, only 2 of us have hosting experience, and we've been on teams, rehearsing, coaching. Only 2 of us put together events. I'm the only full-time artist out of these 5 people that are on this large, huge platform. I think rappers, musicians, actors, they have so much competition because everyone's doing it. As a writer that happens to also be a performer, I think that's a rare niche that I happen to.
Yeah,
I'm allowed to thrive in it because no one else does.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can also hit different types of venues as well. You know what I mean? Like with that kind of flag with artistry, and you can play in a library or like any sort of workshops too, even kind of spaces. Education,
academia loves a writer.
Yeah.
Will they celebrate a rapper the same way? Maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely right. And it's again the connotation to it too. But I was at Greenville Art Space, Jersey City, they put on a show where they had poets, but then they had a couple dudes who wanted to come up, and they were like, is it open? Like, what's the mic like? And we had three or four different rappers who came up and just, spit their stuff a cappella. And it was really cool.
What was this event? Was it on Wednesday?
It was, I think, last Friday or Saturday. Yeah. I performed. I did my solo thing. I had this Peruvian woman play the cajon. She was kind of the house percussionist. Yeah. So I had her pull up, and I played some of my tunes, and it was really cool. Dope. But I'll try to pull you in that space 100%.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, even in terms of going back, I'm thinking about like the presentation of your performance, because for me, I go up there in street clothes, man.
Fair.
I'm not much of a visual person. I'm a musical and like linguistic individual. So like when I go up there, I talk about concepts, and I bring people into sonic awareness, and I try to just create this thing where it's almost like don't judge a book by its cover kind of energy. Yeah. Where it's just like, who's this unassuming rando like just picking up an instrument, and then it's just like you just get transported. Yeah. So I like to take that kind of approach. But
I didn't know you were a professor. I was like, wow, dude,
I didn't know that either. Yeah, it took me a few months to figure out about them.
Yeah, so I'm very low key. I don't even mention it on this show very much, but adjunct professor of psychology for sure. And that's, you got to wear hats. Yeah. Again, music doesn't make money, baby. So, you gotta do what you can, and make. But it wasn't a far jump, especially from writing lyrics. Being symbolic as I am with lyrics, and then bringing that into the conceptual nature of mind, thinking about how concepts affect people, you know what I mean? Then that just leaves the door kind of open, right? For all those sorts of things. So,
fair point. It's a beautiful way of like tying the knowledge that's like important, and then the music and expression that's also, important in its own way.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too what just like a couple of notes do to your state of mind. You know what I mean? Like you hit a 9 chord, right? For those of those who are, you know, musically, but like you hit this chord and it just creates, you're just like, ooh, it just creates an atmosphere like instantaneously. And a lot of times that's where my lyrics come from, you know, because it's like I hear sounds and I mess with the instrument and then that kind of evokes an emotion, which I then put words to.
For sure.
Okay. So, words come later.
Yeah. So I want to hear this. Like, what is your process? Like, how do you kind of maybe find your lyrics, or how would you describe your inspirations? And
I actually consider myself a performance poet. So I am very aware of what I'm doing on stage before the words even come out. So that poem in step, when I'm marching the whole time, I was like, I'm going to write a poem and figure out how to do this the entire time I'm on stage. That was the first thing I did.
So you're incorporating like the performance element.
Yes.
And then
the performance, the stage is the driving factor. The writing around that comes next. One of my coaches taught me that performance poetry, slam poetry, is like kind of creating a skit, a scene. So that's how I step into it.
Yeah. I want to save that question for you too. However, you did mention the poetry contest, and everyone who's listening is probably like, wait, he just said second in the world, right? And I don't want to let that slide. So I do want to give you some space. And can you talk about it? So you went to Tennessee for this poetry competition.
Right.
Talk about it, man. Tell us.
Southern Fried Poetry Slam is the only team-based poetry slam that's still active. 5 of us. Roddy, Theron, Sink, myself, John Burke, all went out to Tennessee to compete and represent Jersey in this competition, and we got second in the country. On a slam poetry team, you compete. There are 5 judges that don't know anything about poetry, don't know anyone competing. They're going for like a representation of the average person.
Okay. And so it's very just like spare
Joe
impact,
Schmo.
Just like, right.
Yeah, exactly.
How does this hit you? Kind of thing.
The idea is we want people that don't have bias, and if we have writers as judges, they have their own personal critiques,
literary
and things that they like.
Type things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we worked together for 2-3 months, choreographed pieces together, performed them all together, and went out there and did our thing.
Wow. That's beautiful, man.
Good looks.
So I mean, I got the pleasure to see, but like a day before, couple of days before you left. Yeah, and that was some of the most really impactful thing. Recently, I had Mr. E. He was on the show. We ended up talking about you because like we mentioned you and like how because he was on that slam team like years ago.
In the past,
so we ended up like running in and talking about that. But I remember talking to him about just about your performance and about like the tandem thing that you do when it's 2 people and then you guys are like spitting at the same time.
2 pieces.
Oh my god, like the rehearsal, the energy.
Too.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man.
All the lines are in sync. We're saying them at the same time. We spill off different lines. We're playing different characters, talking about different things, all in the same piece. It's a whole world and experience. It's a scene. It's a skit. Exactly.
Right. So I want to plant a seed and say, if you have anything you want to recite at some point, think about it. But Wyl, in terms of your lyrics, in terms of your as we had these questions before, right? Inspiration. Do you write music first? Do you write lyrics first? Like, what's your process?
I don't visualize a music video first before anything.
Wow.
Whoa.
Interesting.
I don't have any music videos, by the way.
Interesting.
That's crazy.
That is interesting.
Like performance videos, sure. But I kind of think of like the sort of theatrical, accompaniment to what the music would be, so that I can get a visual idea of what I want people to hear, in audio, and I kind of like then I put the music, and then I put the lyrics.
Wow.
That way it can like follow up on top of each one, building something that's more palatable for folks to.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Do you have like, and this is a random question, but do you have like colors and like themes, like visual themes that you're bouncing off of when you're?
I don't think I can like do music without thinking about like the visual color representation of it.
Wow.
Synesthesia, I think, is supposed to be.
Yeah, that's exactly why I was asking you that question.
A lot of the times, like G is always green because of the easy semblance of the letter, but A is always like a reddish or like brownish color. It's always something that, you know, always, it feels good when you listen to it, because then it translates to the other parts of, like, when you're listening to someone else's music or someone else's poetry, you hear it, what they're saying, and it kind of flows.
And you get like a palette in a way. Yeah. And for those who don't know, synesthesia being the blending of senses, right? So like the fact that you can hear a sound and you get a color, or you get like a word. I met someone at one point who had a synesthesia with like names. So when you heard people's names, it had a taste. So people's names were like a certain, you know, it's really weird. Like, again, this blending of senses, and they're still studying it and like what it does. And a lot of people who end up being artists or being creatives, like, you know, have this thing. And it's also, again, a means of expression, you know. And it normally a lot of times takes people a while to find out that, like, wait, you don't see a color when you listen to music? Like, you're not seeing colors right now? Like, you know, when they're like in their teen years and their adolescent years, they start to find out that not everybody has the same experience.
Yeah.
But someone like Bach had synesthesia.
Y'all both experienced that.
Yeah. No, I do not.
Okay.
I do not. I'm very linguistic, like with words. My mind is like word oriented, sound, maybe math. I'm good at like math, and like I enjoy thinking about shit like physics, you know? So that's kind of like where my brain goes. You know, that there's a geometry to everything type.
Colors only come to me in that way. I only associate colors with feeling because of meditation and things linked with chakras.
Okay.
So I'm like,
right.
So does red feel like home, or like, you know, is that exactly? Yeah.
It's even like layering a feeling into it too, like the color plus the representation of it. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I would be able to relate to it, because I need something.
Well, the thing is too, is that's induced though, because like, you know, like we learn, you learn the color with the chakras. So then you start visualizing it, and then it gets associated. So it's kind of a learned association. Like when it's innate, it's even more curious. And I was always curious too, like what is it, like, does everyone think A is red? Like, you know what I mean? Or like, is there a universality to sound and color? Because both of them are wavelengths, right? Sound is a pressure wave. It's a wave. It's a vibratory field. So is light. Light is a vibration.
Yes.
You increase the vibration, the color changes, right? So I was always kind of curious whether those things paralleled or there was like a universalness to it, but I don't know.
Beautiful.
That's an interesting thought.
I was going to ask, does that like layer into like math and the process of like cognitive, like just studies? And
yeah, well, potentially. I mean, there's a biology to it. So for example, the eye is 370 to 730 nanometers that it can perceive, right? Anything, and red would be the slowest, right? 370 nanometers, which red is the slowest, right? And below red is infrared, right? Makes sense, which is heat. And then you have all the way through the rainbow, right? Exactly, the rainbow is the color spectrum. The highest end is blue and violet, and then you get ultraviolet, which we cannot see, right? Which is the shit that makes you tan, that activates melanocytes in your skin and stuff like that. So, you know, there's a specific range at which our perceptual organs can function. And this is always interesting because for me, it's like perception and reality are not necessarily the same thing. It's just like we're at limit of what we can perceive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's always interesting. You know, a cool theme too as well. Like when you write music, when you go into these things, and one of these, you know, that poem that I was talking about that define love, define lust, define time, and you know, if you must, whatever. You know, it goes into all of these facets of. I feel like I have to read it now.
I know you kind of do. I'm like, I heard that same stanza twice already.
Yeah, no, I will. So
we're doing a
now. Do you have something to recite?
Yeah, of course I do.
Of course, yeah. You're ready. You're born ready. I know. All right. So listen, you could do you, and then I'll do my poem.
Okay. This poem's called Midas Touch. It's funny because I usually do this with someone else.
Oh.
So like they say, everything Midas touched turned to gold. And just like every Greek god, Midas was lazy king. Never thought to touch Icarus's wings, Achilles' heels, or people's lives. Because I know if everything I touched turned to gold, bro, I would turn wine into Chardonnay. I would turn flashlights into moonshine and every kid under a hood into a star. Hashtag if the gods were black, we all would know Apollo's creed. Nike would be the new Amazon. Amazons would be the new gods. Imagine a pantheon full of Howards instead of Hermes, Caldwells instead of Kronos, Atkinsons, not Athenas. You know they'll give us like Aphrodite as long as we cut off her afro. Keep her deity, name her Dionysus, like my aunt Denise ain't a god too, alongside every Rodriguez from the heights to the Mount of Olympus. If we were treated like Greek gods, a Black Panther would have been given a vibranium that would have kept his colon intact. Hashtag if our heroes could ever be mistaken for black, Batman would have been shot so many times you'd think he was Luke Cage. Captain America would still be a lieutenant. The Hulk would be angrier, darker, therefore the villain. Civil War would have been a whole Rosewood massacre. Hashtag if it was okay to have black role models, Viola Davis, the Academy would start treating Viola Davis like the woman king she is. And isn't it funny how we all know Loki, but not Shango? We know Peter Parker, but nothing about the Nazi the Spider. Black spiders don't get to live long. Black gods don't get to save planets. Our daredevils can only save the streets they can see, as if we weren't big enough to see the whole picture. Hashtag even the gods of Egypt weren't black. And isn't it Oscar level irony how our necks become plot twists? We never quote Will Smith's knockout roles, just how he rocked Chris so some kid in Philly only sees his life get flipped turned upside down. Never how his Uncle Phil teaches a prince he can be more than a king. He can be a god. Gods can't be black. Gods never have to protest. They don't make headlines. They make gospels. How could we be gods if it's a miracle just being alive? Hashtag our children can be gods too. Where I grew up, you can't tell me that Midas didn't touch the ground there. Imagine a black Midas putting his hands on the Coronas, the street lights, the bananas, the plantains, my sister's smile, my cousin's teeth. A black Midas touched the shea butter, cocoa butter, the peanut butter, even the fake butters that don't melt to move. Everything Midas touched don't melt. The hair don't melt. The skin don't melt. The heart don't melt. We won't be melted away so easily. And even if we were, it would be gold. And how godly is that?
Woo! Yes.
Thanks, y'all. Yeah.
Snaps.
I never spit a poem on a podcast before. Good looks.
Oh, hey, this is the first time for our podcast and for the first time for you. So.
Good looks.
That's beautiful, man.
Thanks, y'all.
Absolutely wild. And crazy that you memorize all of that. That's you know, and you have how many in the bag that you're just on the top of your head? I think that's absolutely phenomenal.
At least 15.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
Damn. That's a lot of words, man.
Yeah.
Fuck.
That's like 1,000 words in your head, just like sitting up there. Just like the funny thing is too, is what I noticed with lyrics, and this will mess me up, is like if I don't remember the first line, I don't know the whole thing.
Yep.
Like it's gotta be in order, otherwise.
Many a times I've gotten to like the part of the song, beginning of the song, but
right.
It's stuck there.
What's the
but
first lyric?
That's with music though. That's rhythm. It's in sequence.
Yeah. Man, funny. All right. So I am not a professional poet.
Yes, you are.
I'm not. I'm a musician. So, you know, I need my music to catalyze most of my things. But this is a poem that I did write. And I have it on my phone. It's a picture of my laptop. So here we go. Define beauty. Define strength. Define time in all its length. Define what you find behind your eyes and where such knowledge will arise. Define love and lust. Define nothing if you must. As day in and day out thought rearranges, circling about as perspective changes. Moments are fleeting as time keeps repeating, a progression in movement so chaotic. Congruence for which we strive, driven by the tides, we fluctuate in the sea of light, a candle in our own right. Illumination, imagination, an emerged representation, the progression of a ready mind when reality is already mine. From the end to now is beginning, a world spiraling and spinning around and about itself, developing this sense of self. Stumbling out of devotion, derived from pure emotion, everything in motion, the river mouth to ocean. And gazing at what I found, perspective is my ground, reason is my air. All this energy I can take, building reality for perception's sake. And with this energy, I know nothing of what you call matter. Another vibration, a passing sensation bringing its influence. A mind set to merge the unlikely, deep within my psyche. Lighter now and lighted vision, the future to fruition, following my intuition. It is not the answers you seek, but the love of the question. Because the limitless should never be bleak in the layers of self-perception.
Fire. Poem about perception.
Yeah. So that's that really like deep, symbolic, like existential type shit that I like to get into. You know what I mean? So it becomes like just like an avalanche of just
I felt
shit. So it's cool.
It felt borderline stream of conscious.
Yeah, that's what I bounce off of.
Yeah.
And then just, normally what I do is I put some crazy chords behind that, put some heavy rhythm on it, and kind of make it
a piece.
Fun, right? Yeah.
It always rings so much deeper than that, though, because there's like an understanding of how consciousness also plays with what people are, like you said, perception, and how that like all sort of ties in. It's very nice, and it has the timing too that makes it like so much more developed than like I'm playing 4 chords, but it's like wider. Beautiful, man.
I think every song, every poem is the act of defining something. It starts with like this initial thought. In your example, the thought was the idea of perception.
Right.
In my example, the idea of Midas touch. And the writer, performer, songwriter is redefining that one idea, that initial term throughout their entire piece. They're bringing you into this world like, what does the Midas touch mean to this black guy from Jersey City? This is what I think of when I think of someone that can touch something and turn it into gold. That's your experience of how you define perception in your own reality with all the access to information that you have that other people just don't have. And I think every song grabs this one idea, works on it, develops that, breaks it down and presents it to someone.
Right.
It's all about redefining an idea.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've been talking before about like cultural context and like how you kind of through the mind of the artist, like you get to see a piece of them 100%, but also a piece of where they're from, what they've been exposed to. We've been talking like cross culturally, like you listen to music from other cultures or even from other time periods. Like listening to music, we were just talking about doo-wop instead of listening to music from like the 50s or whatever. It just brings you to. Like you feel the time, you feel the era.
Yeah.
And I think that's like just absolutely wild.
Listening to like the Animals compared to like the Strokes is like, whoa, this is...
Right. Yeah. And that's technology playing the role there, right? With tube amps versus solid state amps. And you can go down such a wormhole with tone. Especially guitar players, man. Guitar players. I'm a bass player, so I'm just kind of like, give me a clean channel, give me like with a little thump on it, and then give me a distortion. But guitar players talk about tone for like days. I know you probably got like 9 pedals yourself.
No, actually, I have one that does all 9 of them.
Get out of here. Okay.
Amen.
But then you got to stop and you got to turn a knob, and a lot of people like to be foot driven. But
it is fun though, the process of like figuring out which one goes with what song.
Yeah,
and it's also nice to hear how large bands, stadium rock, and all that stuff, all find their way of like expressing that in the best way. It's nice. It's a little black book that you just go through and like. Oh shit, well this goes well with this one. I'm gonna express this today.
Yeah, I think also how you open a set too is really important, like how you start your set, because depending on like what venue I'm playing or who even played like directly before me, like I'll play like a more chill song if their set was chill, or if they'll play heavy, I'll come out heavy, you know what I mean, like right away, just to kind of keep the equilibrium, which you don't have to do, you know what I mean. Sometimes there's beauty and contrast, but a lot of times too it's like a crowd has a momentum, right? So sometimes I'll try to keep that. If everyone was just like hopped on that last band, I'll come in hot and play something heavy right away and catch them back into okay, we're back on, you know what I mean, with that lull in between the band.
There's actually this idea in poetry. juxtaposition. It's all about the identity that something takes on because it's next to something else. So I'm working on a book right now, and a lot of people that are working on books and do like these poetry collections, they'll just put these random poems next to each other. No, the poem that you put next to this poem has a very different identity just because they're associated with each other.
Right.
And all of these poems being put together, if you have 50 pieces in the book, that book is going to have a story. That book is going to have a theme, and it's going to develop symbols whether you know it or not. Right. Juxtaposition is the identity that something takes on just because they're in the same room.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 100%. Like the order that you put it in. Even like how, in terms of stream of consciousness, like what word comes after the next one, right? What influences. And yeah, it's in terms of presentation and performance, it's extremely important, right? Like what impression did you just leave with? And now what impression are you going to bring in next?
Yep, that's the show.
Right? Yeah, sort of contrasting. It's very cool.
Best way to throw a show together too.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll figure out the order now.
Yeah. Speaking of shows, I want to plug Prototype 237 at this point. So as well as all the other things, all the like 9 hats, all the amazing things that are happening in this room with each one of us. Rashad is running and helping out with Prototype 237 in Paterson, New Jersey. Yep. Beautiful venue. Amazingly artistic. There's like that giant lion head carving thing. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
But beautiful.
Probably the coolest one I've seen in Jersey, to be honest.
Good looks.
Yeah. And very has a theatrical or a theater energy to it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times you go to venues, especially with music, like you go to a venue and it's just like
a bar,
dirty and dungy, or a bar, or like whatever. It's a basement. You know what I mean? But like Prototype feels like a theater. You know what I mean? And that walk up, man, it makes you get prepared. You know, it's really funny, and I'm going to say this because
you earned the show.
Yo, you know how they have monasteries, like monks have monasteries, and they're always at the top of a mountain for some reason.
Yeah.
The reason why it's there is because the time that it takes you to ascend, to climb the mountain, is the time that's necessary for your mind to be prepared once you get there. Right? So,
that's so deep. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? So I'm going to say the same thing with Prototype, because that's a 4-floor walk up, man. And sometimes I got to quit.
5 floors.
5 floor, yeah. 5th floor walk up to get to that theater. And you're like, yo, I'm really going. Like, we're really going to the show right
now.
There is an elevator, you know, just to be friendly. And for the handicapped folks and the people who want to bring cabinets.
We're accessible.
You know what I mean? But what's going on at Prototype, man?
Yeah.
What's the highlights for maybe the next month or something like that?
Proto mic is really taking off. That's my monthly open mic.
Or Tuesdays?
Last Tuesday of every month.
Right.
You got one the 29th, right?
Yes. Yeah. We got a feature coming in that was like one of the best women in the world, top 10, I believe. And yeah, we got good artists coming in. A bunch of bands. We got a show there tonight. I know Joy on Fire is coming back pretty soon. They've been on NPR. So that's pretty dope. And we got our anniversary coming up in October, I believe. And that's always the biggest show of the year.
Cool.
Yeah.
October what?
Horrible Rashad doesn't know the date.
It's not like you're married to the venue, like you forgot the anniversary.
There, you know? That's it.
You know what I mean? But that's cool. That's cool.
Who are y'all up to? The Spider-Man.
Well, my booking is always very sporadic. I got, I always have shows that are always very last minute. People hit me up 2 weeks before. I do not a lot of booking myself personally. I'm at the point where I've been playing for 17 years. And I've been performing for 17 years. You know what I'm saying? So it's in this area, you know what I mean? So like the history that I have and the people that know me, people put on a show and they say, hey, they'll be like, hey, I got this show in 2 weeks. I'm putting on, you want to play? And that's kind of just how most of my booking works. Mm-hmm. So I have one in late July in Lambertville, which is like super far out. I actually met a new crew of people, some bands out there. So going there on the 28th. I believe I have something happening in August 19th. I think I may be putting together a show. So y'all will hear about that very soon.
Good to know. Would love to come through.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And then, of course, my workshops in psychology are always running. Check the links in the description for that. And of course, y'all be able to find Rashad. You'll be able to find Wyl through those things. But any shows for you? Anything popping?
Well,
and you didn't share nothing, by the way.
Oh, I was thinking that, but I mean, I don't know if you have a poem or if you have lyrics that you have memorized.
I do have lyrics that I have memorized.
Yes. So this is the first time I've had performances.
Yeah.
Live performances on the show. So it's very cool.
That's pretty dope. Yeah. Thank you. Glad to go first.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Well, they say that the black man's wrong. Well, they say that he's all turned wrong. But I'm not listening, 'cause I'm... Leave me alone, 'cause oh good God, leave me alone. Well, Jesus Christ was a man, living his life out on a plan, but he got headstrong, and it proved him wrong. Oh, leave me alone.
That's cool. Tidbit. I thought you were gonna go the whole thing. That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, I like sometimes to like tell a story that kind of intrinsically also goes along with the social culture at the moment.
Yeah. You had a little touch there about Jesus being, what's the lyric? What's the line?
Jesus Christ was a man living in life on a plan, but he got headstrong and they proved him wrong.
Yeah. Leave him alone. Leave him alone. Let him cook, man.
Yeah, let him cook.
Let my man's cook.
But no, I always like to bring back to people too. I'm like, yo, you know, Jesus got killed by the Roman government, right?
Just happened.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a kind of political, philosophical, governmental. You know, it's just like, it's crazy.
Break it down to him.
It's crazy, man. You know what I'm saying? There's just too much, division, things like that.
Dropping knowledge, man.
Things happen all the time.
Is your art form inherently political?
Me?
Both of you.
I'll start. I'll say no.
Okay.
That's the end of my. Because I'm very existential and philosophical, I would say.
Philosophy is politics, bro.
No. Well, ethics is politics.
Okay.
Metaphysics and epistemology are not.
That's fair.
It's 5 branches of philosophy, right? So.
No, I'm not political.
You don't think that lyric was a little political? You don't think that song was political? It was a little political.
Well, that's probably the only song that I could say that I wrote that I feel is maybe political.
I mean, is it anything that makes a statement political?
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand how you're using the word statement, because I can make a statement like my dog is short, and that's a statement, but it's not. And I'm being facetious, right? I'm being funny, right? But I think just naturally how I approach art, my shit is always about like understanding the self and layers of the self and expression and who you are and how you define yourself. And that's just really where my music always, like I have a song called Lost Kingdoms. And Lost Kingdoms is like these areas of your mind that you don't go, right? So those lost kingdoms. And there's another one called Ether, and it talks about like letting go, like letting things out. Like we all hold weight, we hold pressure, right? Letting things out, letting it go to the ether, right? So it's always about aspects of the human condition and like how we approach things and how we could even maybe approach things differently. Like I always feel like I'm kind of trying to help people, because I feel like at the end of the day, right, music really helps people. I've been helped by music in my life, you know, so I feel like it's kind of the same connotation the way I approach
personally,
it.
For sure. It's always different for everybody else, though. They always experience the notes differently. Some people even hear them at a different.
Some people see them.
Some people fucking see it. Who's that shit?
Yeah, no, that's really wild. I'm crazy that I know that about you now. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. But because people experience music differently, maybe art isn't inherently political, but all art could be political. Does that make more sense?
Anything could be, but saying could doesn't mean like it has the potential to become that.
I mean, based on the perception of the audience.
Right.
I can call it political, but the artist might not.
Right.
The narrator might not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the interesting thing about art or music or any sort of creative process. It's always twofold. It's the creator and the observer, right? So, you know, it's very interesting, you know, how that interplay goes back and forth. Like the intention that you have as a creator might not be what comes across, right? Or, you know, vice versa.
Yeah, because if you guys didn't say anything about that being political, I wouldn't have thought. But now I'm thinking, like, well, okay.
Yeah. I mean, irony.
I love that.
Yeah.
That sincerity in your work. I love that.
Leave him alone. Right? But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like talking about something like, you know, you were singing about Jesus, and he's a religious figure, but he rocked the boat for the Roman politics and the order of individual. And what is politics at the end of the day, right? Like, you know what I mean? If you're gonna ask is art political, well, what do you mean by politics, right?
Art though? Well, art though?
Ethics. Politics is ethics and the practice of it.
Right. Yeah. Right. What we should and shouldn't do. And is art, I think art is a really good way to express like living and the living form.
And that's the intersection.
Right. Yeah. It's like, you know, we have this lived experience through the society, which is controlled by a political, maybe nature or something like that. But
it then comes down to hierarchy too. Kind of like,
right.
Who's got the most bones and like how much that particular amount puts you at a higher distance from those who don't. It's weird.
Right. How much skin you have in the game, really. Because it has to do with investment. It has to do in terms of that, you know what I mean? Like also you make policy, you know, not knowing how it affects other people who are affected by those policies. Mm-hmm. It becomes a really crazy game when you start writing like, oh, well, this is the tax rate or this is whatever, or like this is a social program. And no matter how benevolent you want to make, if the policy is benevolent, however you want to make it, there's still going to be people who fall through the cracks and they didn't meet certain criteria and blah, blah, blah. Yep. And it's going to be something on the human level that it's like, well, just let them, you know, go through. But by paper, right? By rule of decree,
yep.
Right? You don't meet criteria, right? And this is where, is it ethical, right? To deny someone something or to, you know, deny health care, deny whatever. Right. Because of that, it becomes a really big thing.
I don't think the argument is no, it might not be ethical, but are we as a people made to be 100% ethical? I don't think we are or haven't done that yet.
Right.
Yeah.
No, 100%. I mean, they say that the idea of utopia is, you know, it's not feasible. Some people say, you know what I mean? It's not possible to have utopia. And even if you do, right, again, there's still going to be maybe people who are on the lower end of spectrum or whatever. Like the thing is
the outliers.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I think this is going to need a part 2, my guys. I think I'm going to have to ask you guys to come back because if we as artists, we've dove pretty deep into the artistic process, if we're going to start diving into these other avenues.
We got another chair to fill.
We're gonna, we might have to bring a third. We have a fourth person. Yeah, we might have to do that. So for there, we're out of time here at the Conscious Endeavor. I want to thank Mr. Rashad Wright for joining me, Mr. Wyl White.
He's not even.
That didn't even intentionally rhyme. And Iron Man Dan is your host. We are here at the Conscious Endeavor, and see you guys next time.